Thank God, it's great because the food here for a long time in Nashville was really bad, Darius. When I first got
Mm,
here, it was really bad, but it's getting there, man. And so when we got here 8 years ago, it was a challenge. Billy and I came together multiple times, and we're like, all right, I think we're gonna have to prolong. We're gonna have to postpone the opening because the first part was these people were used to serving a beer and a shot when it comes to bartenders. They weren't wine to them was very foreign, and cocktails were a little bit too much. It was just too much for them. And then on top of it, they're known for fried chicken here, hot chicken, right? So you
yeah.
can go anywhere you want in Nashville, you're going to get two things. Back in 8 years ago, I'm talking about hot chicken and barbecue. And they're going to do it great.
Yeah. If you ever worked a double, burned your hand, still showed up, this one's for you. This ain't just a podcast. It's the culture. It's the people. It's the industry. Real chefs talk. And everybody gets heard.
What's going on, y'all? Welcome to Real Chef Talk. I'm your host, Chef Darius, and today's guest is somebody who's been in the industry for over 16 plus years. He's worked all over Chicago, he's worked all over Las Vegas, and now he's based out in Nashville. And his story is just pure, and he's a pure, genuine guy. He's someone I had the opportunity to work with back in 2013, the start of my career. And I'm just really, really excited to have him share his story here with me today. Please welcome Brad. Hey, what's going on?
How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. I can't complain. It's a beautiful day, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the growth that I've been able to experience throughout the years. How have you been?
Dude, so proud. I keep seeing you on Facebook and LinkedIn, man. So proud of the work you're doing. It's pretty awesome, dude.
I appreciate that, and I wanna sort of get right into it. You've been in the industry for over 16 plus years, man, and I think that's like really amazing. Not a lot of people understand what it means to be in our industry and what it takes to be a general manager. Not only a general manager, but a director of operations at that. Walk me through how you sort of got into hospitality and your role at get into the general
Yeah.
manager.
Yeah, for me, there's a real simple, man. I grew up in the restaurant business, so my family, as you know, we work together. My family, I grew up in Evanston, Skokie area. My family's owned the same restaurant for the last 55 years in Skokie, Illinois. It's called Herm's Palace. My
Mhm.
brothers currently still run it and own it. So the restaurant business has been in my blood my whole entire life. We started working there. I started working there when I was 10 years old. And so a lot of my success has come from the base that I was given as a kid with my
Mhm.
parents, working for my parents at their restaurant. We had it's a small fast food business. We make our own homemade Italian beefs and chili and pizzas and all that good stuff, and sandwiches, hot dogs, and but what it
Mhm.
did for me was give me a really good base of what hard work was all about, right? And my dad, and
Mhm.
working for your parents, they even expect that much more than a regular boss does. So for me, I started from cooking food to, washing dishes to watching parking lots and all different types of things. And so for me, it was kind of embedded into me that that's
Yeah.
kind of what I was going to do. And so I left there I did that all the way through high school and a little bit through college. And then I was like, all right, I really want to do something that I really love, which I love the restaurant business, but I also love sports. And so I was like, I left the restaurant business for a little bit, worked in the sports radio business for a while, and I loved it. But I soon found out that the money was tough, really tough,
Yeah.
unless you kind of had your own show. And so I got back into what I knew, which was the restaurant business. And so for me, starting as an assistant manager with Red Lobster almost 36 years ago,
Mhm.
honestly, man, it was the best training I ever got. There is for me, I give a lot of credit and a lot of blessings to my parents, but also I only was with the Red Lobster Foundation Darden Company for about a year and a half, 2 years, and I
Mhm.
learned so much in their training program. They have this Darden University that you go to, and it really
Yeah.
teaches you the aspects and the fundamentals of um, of management. And then I think the biggest growth for me was I needed to grow up a little bit, and I needed to make sure that I understood and I can stand on my own 2 feet. And so I took risk, and I moved to Las Vegas, and I kind of went
Mhm.
and worked for the big boys in Vegas. I worked at the Bally's Hotel and restaurant casino, and really got an idea of what true hospitality was like. I think going to Vegas really made me, one, understand that I was in the right business and I really
Mhm.
wanted to be there, and two, that it was going to take a lot of hard work to accomplish what I needed to do. I loved the Vegas thing, and then 9/11 hit, and Vegas became a ghost town, and nobody came to Vegas for like a
Yeah.
year. So I decided to move back to Chicago.
What was it like? What was some of the things that you learned while being out there in Vegas, that really prepared you for uh your role in the industry? What do you think what was your biggest takeaway from working there?
Yeah, Vegas was really instrumental in me understanding. Really, the biggest thing was hospitality and food on a level that was at that time back in the late '90s. Vegas was doing food that other people weren't doing, Darius. And really, what people were doing is the true chefs of chefs were going to
Mhm.
Vegas and putting their names and stamping their names on big restaurants in Vegas. And so you had this whole country, right? And then you had that little
Mhm.
town of Vegas. And people, when they wanted to try the best of the best, and of course they wanted to gamble, they went to Vegas. But when they wanted to try the best of the best from a hospitality standpoint, from a food standpoint, from a price standpoint, it was very pricey, but you got what
Mhm.
you paid for. And so what Vegas really taught me was if you really truly give people true hospitality and you really truly give people great food, they're willing to pay for it. And so it was
Mhm.
Vegas, in my opinion, simply my opinion, that allowed the places like New York and Chicago and Miami and all these places that are now flourishing in the restaurant scene. It was Vegas that allowed them to do that because that's, to me, that's kind of where it started for me.
Wow, that's pretty interesting take. You said you ended up coming back to Chicago during 9/11 because Vegas ended up being a ghost town. What was your transition like coming back to Chicago when you got here?
Yeah. So for me, it ended up being a blessing for me to come back because one of the things that I was able to do again, working in what I deemed the highest level of hospitality and standards, I was able to bring that back to a company called McCormick and Schmick Seafood Restaurants, and so I was really honored and blessed to be able to work for them as long as I did. I was there for almost 14 years, 14 and a half years, I think, and I started as an assistant manager, Darius, and really quickly worked my way up to the general manager, became a director of operations, and I ended up leaving the company after almost 15 years as the training director. And I opened up 45 out of the 85 restaurants that we had opened in the company. So when I joined the company, we were at about 44 restaurants, 45,
Mhm.
somewhere there. When I left, we were at 90. And I had opened them and trained all the managers and the staff and basically we took the restaurant over from construction all the way until the first day it was open. And then I turned over the keys to the general manager. So we trained all the managers, we trained all the staff, we did everything. But again, I worked my way up through that system. Got to be
Mhm.
very friendly with the owners, Doug Schmick and Bill McCormick, and it truly was like a family, Darius. And so, when you and I came together later in life, I'd already
Mhm.
experienced this family atmosphere in a very large capacity at McCormick and Schmick's. Even though we had about 90 restaurants when I left, everybody knew everybody. Everybody,
Yeah.
we were really in tune with what we did, and the standards and the policies, they were alive in every single restaurant that we had opened and we had worked at. The food standards were top notch. We literally
Mhm.
did, I think it was 40 some odd species a day, Darius, and our
Mhm.
menus in McCormick and Schmick's, they changed twice a day. So we had a lunch menu. If we ran out of a species, whether we ran out or not, we served a different menu at dinner time. And so
Mhm.
all of our species were fresh. You never had to worry about if it was anything frozen. Didn't work that
Mhm.
way. And so I really got an understanding and a great opportunity to really understand high level food,
Mhm.
understand how to work with high level food, what was acceptable, what was not acceptable, and the same thing
Mhm.
from a service standard. That all came through McCormick and Schmick's.
Now you talked a little bit about some of the systems that were in place and some of the standards. What are some of the systems that allow for a company or a restaurant to be successful? And if for someone who's even trying to get into the industry, what
Yeah.
makes them successful? How can you
So
get your foot in there?
Yeah, it's a great question. So for me, and I always tell people, I'm at the stage in my life now, Darius, where I'm kind of on the backside of my career. And so for me, I'm
Mhm.
trying to kind of would pay it forward type of scenario where even young men like yourself who are so driven, which I think is amazing. And I met many other people who are driven to, find success in this company. I tell them there's three simple rules that I live by. And even back then I lived by. One is consistency.
Mhm.
Whoever you are, no matter what kind of concepts you're going to develop, you need to be consistent. It could be a coffee place, it could be a restaurant, it could be, fast food, fine dining, mid dine, doesn't matter, but you need to be really consistent in what you do. Whatever it is you do it the best you can do it, but then do it consistently. You can't get up today and do it one way today, tomorrow do it another way, and think that eventually it's still going to be the same concept and that
Mhm.
everybody's going to be happy with it. Because what people don't realize is, everybody will make, I don't know if they make fun or not, but I feel like McDonald's sometimes gets beaten up for, they got so many restaurants and they don't know what they're doing. But the one thing they do is they're consistent. You know what you're
Mhm.
walking into. You know what kind of Big Mac you're going to get, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
And you know what kind of French fries and drinks you're going to get, whether you like it or not. Their service is good. It's consistent. Some people will say consistently bad. Some people say consistently good. What it is consistent. So the first thing I would say is consistency. The second thing I would say is that you have to really, really be behind the product that you are serving. And again, whether it's coffee, whether it's fast food, whether it's fine dining, whatever menu you've developed or continue to develop as you build your restaurants, you got to really be behind it. You got to really want to. You have to live it, and you have to really be proud of it. I think there's some concepts out there, they just develop these items and they're not,
Mhm.
they're just developing items just to stay up on kind of the trends, and what they're not is
Mhm.
passionate about them, and so they do them in a very, what I would, in my opinion, would be very inconsistent way. So I
Mhm.
think, consistency and prideful of what you're doing is huge. And the third part about, what advice I would give for anybody that's trying to do a restaurant is, it really has got to be in your system, man. I mean, I think it's like anything else. If restaurants or hospitality is in your system, I think you can go a long way because there's so many mentors. And what excites me there is about seeing what's happening with you is you're going to be that mentor now for everybody else that maybe some people were for you, the Billy Decks of the world that were for you,
Mhm.
Mike Morales and those guys. That's amazing. It's your turn to pay it forward, right? And so the
Yeah.
third part of that would be to make sure and understand that however you got to wherever you got to be able to build a restaurant, don't forget that. Don't
Yeah.
forget that part, because that will get you to be able to be more successful and to also allow you to help others kind of do the same thing.
I appreciate that. So I want to talk a little bit about how you move from working with the McCormick Swarmers place and moving towards Sunda, where I end up
Yeah.
eventually meeting you at. Uh,
Yep.
how did you end up at Sunda? And you've had a long tenure there. I remember my first day there.
Yeah.
It was you who sort of made the environment more feeling comfortable for me, because I came in and everybody literally was looking at me like, man, how you get this job here? You ain't did not a stage or nothing. And I'm like, they're like, you must really know your stuff. And little behold, in my head, I'm like, nah, I really don't know too much of anything. I'm just coming in like a deer in the headlights,
Yeah.
trying to figure it out. How did you end up?
Yeah, it's a great question. So when I was with the McCormick and Schmick's brand, what was clear to me was, and again, I had a really long tenure there. Doug Schmick and Bill McCormick had already sold the company. They were retiring, and rightfully so, man. They worked so hard over the time that they should be able to enjoy the rest of their lives. For me, it was an uncomfortable situation because at the end of the day, I was really passionate about what they were doing. And it kind of goes back to what I was telling you. You got to be really behind what you're doing. And I was very
Mhm.
behind of the fresh species and all that good stuff we were doing. No knock on them, but these are just facts. When I left the company, Darius, there was 90 of them. I think we were close to 90 of them. A gentleman named Tillman Fertitta, who actually owns the Houston Rockets. He owns many different things. He owns a casino in Vegas, and he owns Landry Seafood, and he bought Morton's. He's bought a lot of different companies. He ended up buying McCormick and Schmick's. And clearly, honestly, he wanted to take it in a different direction. When they took over our company, his presidents, our first meeting with them, they literally said something to me that literally made me realize it was time for me to go find another job, Darius. And they said, hey, you all count dollars, we count pennies. And I was like, oh, that's a problem.
Yeah.
And basically what he was telling us was, hey, whatever you did, this is what it cost you to do it. We're going to do it better. We're going to do it
Mhm.
cheaper, and we're going to make the same money. And so our fresh species that went on the menu twice a day, every day started, we never printed another menu. We continued with the same menu every day. We started freezing fish. We started doing things that just wasn't right. And the truth of the matter is
Mhm.
we literally have, I think there's 12 maximum. McCormick and Schmick's
Mhm.
left out of 90. So that should tell you everything that happened. So for
Wow.
me, I was blessed and I was a gentleman, and I don't know if you met him, Darius, in your time there. There was a gentleman named Seth Kagi, who was the
Mhm.
director of operations at the time for Rocket Ranch Productions. You know, they owned Rocket,
Mhm.
Sunda, Underground, all that. Seth actually worked for me as a general manager in one of my Skokie locations at McCormick and Schmick's. And so
Mhm.
he actually, it's a funny story. If you remember Matt Ferris
Yeah.
was a assistant manager for me at McCormick and Schmick's. He also was uncomfortable with where McCormick and Schmick's was going, so he started interviewing with companies, and one of the companies he interviewed with was Rocket Ranch Productions, which was part of
Mhm.
Sunda. They had a barbecue outlet called Dragon Ranch, and so Matt was actually interviewing to be the general manager of Dragon Ranch, and they actually hired him to be so. And Seth
Mhm.
Kagi was the guy that interviewed him, and Matt was very transparent with me and said, "Hey, bro, like you, I'm gonna try to get out." And he said, "Hey, have you ever heard about Rocket Ranch Productions and this place called Dragon Ranch?" And I hadn't. I said, "No, I never heard of it." He's like, "I interviewed with a guy named Seth Kagi." I'm like, "Wait a second, I know that guy." And so, sure
Mhm.
enough, long story short, I helped Matt get that job. Ironically, a week after Matt accepted the job, Dragon Ranch burned down, and
Wow.
so he didn't have the job there, but they gave him a job as an assistant manager at Sunda. And
Mhm.
so Matt told me he was going to work at Sunda, and then ironically, I ended up running into Seth, and Seth was like, "Hey, I understand you work with Matt." I'm like, "Yeah." He's
Mhm.
like, Just let me know if you're ever looking for a job." I'm like, "Hey, actually, I'm looking. I need to, need to kind of get out of McCormick and Schmick's." And he's like, "Dude, I need a GM, a really high level GM, Brad at Sunda. Like the issue is not it making money. The issue is it doesn't run the greatest, and we just need somebody in there that can really come in and truly run it." And so I interviewed with Arturo Gomez, as you know, Arturo,
Mhm.
and he was my first interview. And when I was done with Arturo, I literally came home from that interview and told my wife, like, I need to go work for this guy. I had not met
Yeah.
Billy or Brad yet, but Arturo impressed me so much. And I was so impressed with his background. Started as a dishwasher at Underground, was a graduate of Michigan University. I mean, he just went through so many different things. And as you know, as I'm sure you know, he's
Yeah.
succeeding in life so well right now. I'm so excited to see what he's doing with him and his family. And I just know that when I was done with that interview, I needed to go work for that guy. And so I
Yeah.
later interviewed with Billy and Brad, and they hired me, and I ended up becoming a GM there. That's kind of how it happened.
Wow, that's awesome story. I remember my first day working at, and I said I remember my first day there, and you were just so warming and welcoming. You know, you're one of the people that really made me was like, man, I think I can do this. But when I think back to my time at Sunda, what I really wish I had, I feel like what I didn't have was a I wish I'd have had like a format or a plan of where I was
Yeah,
going,
yeah,
and what I was doing, because sort of when I got there, I remember Billy, he was like, "Hey, I got my chef here for you, and he's gonna help you grow." Basically, I did, and me being a young guy in terms, I didn't really understand what that meant. I just knew,
yeah,
hey, I got an opportunity here, you know,
yeah,
and I'm ready to work. And but what back to, I just wish there was like a system, because I came in as a prep, and um they threw me on the line my first day, and I was flustered, I
yeah,
remember being real
yeah,
flustered, and Chef Mike at the time, he was he was my Gordon Ramsay.
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
and
No, I
and
do.
it was
You know, what's funny, Darius, is I remember even as far back as you came in with your classmates,
mhm,
and I know Billy put on some type of, or they put on some type of thing, and your classmates came in, and we sat down and had you guys try some food and coordinate that.
mhm,
And I could tell even then, like you were so into what was happening in the restaurant. You had, out of all your classmates, a couple of your classmates had some questions, not so much, but not only did you have
yeah,
questions, but your questions were well thought out, and you really kind of had an idea and understanding, like this is where you wanted to go. And so when we did bring you in, and I remember Billy telling me that he was going to have you come in and work with us, and you said something that is bang on, and so I'm really glad you said it, because and again, it's made you stronger and better, Darius. But I think
mm,
if I could have shared anything with Chef Mike and Billy was, and I come from the opposite. You said it, I wish I had a plan, and that was always my frustration with what we did in the back of the house when it came to Sunda, because what
mhm,
we produced was amazing food, Darius.
mhm,
Nobody can to this day. I've been out of Sunda for what are we talking about? 4 or 5, I think it's 6 years now, something around that, 6 years. I moved here to Nashville to open up Sunda 8 years ago.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I think it's been 6 years since I've been out of Sunda. To this day, I can never say anything bad about how our food was, how our service was, how everything was when it came to that. I think the
Mhm.
one thing that was frustrating for me that I didn't do a really great job of fixing, and then more importantly, I think we didn't put enough emphasis on there. We took for granted we had great food. How we executed
Mhm.
that food, how we got it was we had an extremely strong Asian background, obviously Sunda being an Asian
Yeah.
restaurant, that of chefs that completely understood it and
Mhm.
completely killed it and knew how to just make it, and the food was phenomenal. What we
Mhm.
didn't have, those chefs were not, they didn't have the ability to train really well. And I still, and
Mhm.
again, I can't speak for today, even though I will say that I know that, like you, I know Mikey still, and I know Johnny and some of the guys that are still running it.
Mhm.
They're great guys and they're great executioners and they're great at executing how to make that food. What they're not
Mhm.
great at, and what always was one of my biggest hiccups, and from a standpoint of wanting to grow Sunda, was we needed people that needed to be able to develop other people, because you got to
Mhm.
be able to teach, you got to be able to show it, you got to be able to make sure that people are, again, it goes back to what I told you about at the beginning when you asked me about the three important things. Got to be consistent, right?
Yeah.
We got to know that if we're going to serve Sunda lumpia and Sunday today, it's got to taste like the lumpia tomorrow. And so
Yeah.
with our original team at Sunda Chicago, that wasn't a problem because those people in the kitchen, they had been doing it for so many years. They just didn't
Mhm.
take outsiders like you very well. What they
Yeah.
did was, to your point, they threw you on the line and said, "Hey, figure it out." And that to me
Yeah.
was always a little bit tough for me.
Yeah, it did, and them throwing me on the line, it made me. I'm not gonna lie, I was ready. I think by the first week, I was ready to go. I was ready to run. I was like, you know what, this isn't for
Yeah.
me, yo.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
this isn't for me because, just as I said, there wasn't really a clear plan as to where I was going. I just knew I was there and that I was supposed to grow and learn, but it wasn't said, like, okay, I feel like if there was a plan saying, okay, are we going to have you working downstairs in prep for about 2 or 3 months, and then from there we'll move you to banquets to learn there, and then up online and things like that. But I was sort of just thrown in. And I could say one thing that was sort of frustrated for me was, as I continued to grow and learn and got better, I feel like I can never get out of the shadow of my beginning stage there at
That's right.
Sunda. And basically, from them seeing me as the guy that make all these mistakes, and they seen the growth, but even though they seen the growth, it was still, they could never look past all the mistakes that I made. So I felt like I was very stagnant because um
Yeah.
that's all they saw. And it got to a point where, for me, I remember I was just so frustrated. I was like, yo, you guys keep telling me once we get somebody new in, you all gonna move me up, move me here, move me there. And it just seemed like every time we got somebody in, it just wasn't happening for me. And I
Right.
remember, and as I was progressing and growing still, I was still thrown back in the prep kitchen no matter what. Like, that was my home space. At Sunday, the
Yeah.
prep kitchen was my home space. And I just got so frustrated there that I remember I started to revert back to the very beginning, the guy that was so sort of like not there,
Not
not
sure of
putting in the
himself.
effort. Yeah, and
Yeah.
and I remember got to the point where Chef Jess sat me down and he was like, "Yo, if we don't get it together, we're gonna have to let you go." And I was shocked at that point. That's I was like, I was
Sure
so
was.
and not so much shocked, but I was like, man, I really got to do something. And I remember going to HR, and they were like, "Man, why didn't you say anything earlier?" And it was more so for me, it was more so just trying to prove myself. I was always trying to prove
Mhm.
myself, trying to come out the shadow of just being Billy's boy. I'm like, no, I'm not just his boy, yo. I'm trying to, I'm more than that. But I didn't mind it at the same time, but it was like, it just seemed like I could never break out of that shadow. And I really feel like
Yeah.
where my career took off was when Bronson, he told me, he was like, yo, you should get another job from outside of here. You working here, you probably ain't gonna really fully grow, fully get to your expectations of where you're trying to go to. So I
Yeah.
end up branching off over at Beatrix, and I feel like that's where I really was able to start growing a little bit more and getting a little bit more opportunity, because uh I only went to Beatrix to be a dishwasher. I was like, man, I'm done with the line. I don't want to do anything, because
Yeah.
that was
But
just
they're
my
a
mindset
perfect
at that point.
example. But they're a perfect example, Darius, of what I was talking about. Let Us Entertain You has as an understanding of the amount of restaurants they have opened in the
Mhm.
time that they have opened them. You can't do that without training your people, Darius. And so,
Mhm.
again, I'm glad you brought that up because, again, it just proves my point of what I've been saying, and that is, you can't have expectations of people unless you're going to be willing to really show them what you expect from them, right?
Mhm.
My biggest frustrations, and I think you know this and you saw this in the time that I was at Sunda, and I was there, I think it was 8 years, I think it was,
Mhm.
somewhere to that effect, about 8-year run. Loved every minute of it. I thought it was incredible. The frustrating part for me was that, as you saw, many people in the front of the house got promoted to management
Mhm.
in my 8 years that I was there. When I took over Sunday in 2012, they had a management team of, I think there was 3 of them,
Mhm.
and the GM was out, so that's why I came in. There was 3, and then Matt and I came in. And so over that time of 8 years, I promoted multiple people from Evan Fuller to Johnny Arena to
Mhm.
Chun Lai, who has done an amazing job in his life right now.
Mhm.
So many Nina, so many people from the service staff, from the bar staff to managers, not because of me, because of
Mhm.
their work ethic. But even as and you know this in the business, you could be a great line cook, you can be a great dishwasher, you can be a great prep cook. That doesn't always correlate to being a great chef, right? It
Yeah.
can, and a lot of times it will,
Yeah.
but that's only going to happen if the management team, the chef team, cares to make them a good chef and a good manager. I always tell people, you can't teach in the front of the house. I can't teach you to be hospitable. You
Yeah.
either have it in your gene or you don't. But I can teach you the aspects of hospitality. Because if you
Mhm.
have it, I'll teach it to you. In your case, in the kitchen, again, the frustration lied for me was, Darius, you always had the want. You always
Mhm.
had the want to be better, learn, and not, to your point, not make mistakes that you had made before. You made those mistakes because you weren't taught.
Mhm.
But we didn't do the greatest job of making sure that you got the tools to take and put in your toolbox so that you could be the best. And so Lettuce is a perfect example of a company that, and don't get me wrong, they got turnover like everybody else, but you
Yeah.
never go, I guarantee you, you walked in there with a training manual. You understood
Yeah.
a handbook. You understood all those things. We developed that over time at Sunda. And I will take a lot of, not credit myself, but I'm very prideful of the fact that I went to Billy and I went to Brad and I went to Arturo and I was like, hey, man, we need structure.
Mhm.
You guys don't have structure. What you have is a successful business, somewhat
Mhm.
accidentally, because Sundo had just had great food. And so we had great food with great people running the venues. We just had no structure. And so
Yeah.
Matt Ferris, myself, others, we brought structure to Sunda. And I think we didn't do the greatest job of doing that right away in the kitchen. I think when I left, we were better, but and I
Mhm.
hopefully now today they're even that much better. I hope. But Lettuce is a prime example, Darius, of somebody that
Yeah.
has structure that can show you a success rate.
Yeah. And talking about you building the structure at Sunda, you managed to help open what 2 or 3 different other Sundas? You helped open the one in Nashville, and
Yep.
if I'm not mistaken, you also helped the one in Miami.
I
How
didn't.
what was
I was
the
gone. I'm sorry. I was gone with the one in Tampa, but I was involved in a couple openings with them. Obviously, we opened up a couple restaurants in my time there. We opened up
Mhm.
Bottle Fork, the restaurant. If you
Yeah.
remember Bottle Fork, which is right down the street
Yeah.
from Sunda, we opened up the Duck Inn, which is not, it's always been Kevin Hickey's place, but I was involved in that, and I was involved in with a cocktail club that we had Chihuahua up there on I forget what street it was, but then we did a cocktail bar there. So I was
Yeah.
involved in all 3 of those. And then I was involved, and more than just involved, I opened up the Sunday in Nashville. So definitely had experience doing that.
What was that process like, opening getting the stages of getting from it going from just, being on the paper to actually, getting it all the way fully up and developing and running to go?
Yeah. So it's the most rewarding thing you can do in our business. There is
Mhm.
hospitality business, but it's also the most challenging because for us in we knew Chicago. So
Mhm.
Sunda, Chicago was easy. Had we opened up another Sunda Chicago right away, I think we would have been more successful than what we were by opening up a restaurant in a state that we didn't know, in a city we didn't
Mhm.
know. Successful, yes. Was it a successful opening? Yes. Was it 3.5, almost 4 months behind when we wanted to open? Yes. Because what we realized real quickly was Nashville wasn't Chicago. It wasn't even
Mhm.
close. But we're in a honky tonk city trying to teach back then. Today's very different. Today, man, every major chef in America is trying to come to Nashville to open up a restaurant. Thank God, it's great because
Mhm,
the food here for a long time in Nashville was really bad, Darius. When I first
mhm,
got here, it was really bad, but it's getting there, man. And so when we got here 8 years ago, it was a challenge. Billy and I came together multiple times and we're like, all right, I think we're gonna have to prolong, we're gonna have to postpone the opening because the first part was these people were used to serving a beer and a shot when it comes to
mhm,
bartenders. They weren't wine to them was very foreign and cocktails were a little bit too much. It was just too much for
mhm.
them. And then on top of it, they're known for fried chicken here, hot chicken, right? So you
Yeah.
can go anywhere you want in Nashville, you're gonna get two things. Back in 8 years ago, I'm talking about hot chicken and barbecue,
Mhm.
and they're gonna do it great. Both of them, hot chicken and barbecue. That
Yeah.
doesn't resonate to sushi and Asian Pan Asian food, or
Yeah.
Asian fusion, I should say. And so when Mike Morales and myself, Chef Mike Morales, myself, and Chun Lai, who is our general manager when we opened, hit the ground here in Nashville back in 2017 beginning of six or end of 16, we quickly found out. Chris Plunkett, our HR director, him and
Mhm,
I did we put ourselves up at the Thompson Hotel. I'm sorry, we were at the Renaissance Hotel. And we did a career day there, Darius. And the people that were walking to look for the jobs, it was scary. I remember that day being over. I looked at Chris Plunkett and I was like, we're in trouble, right? He's like, we're in big trouble, Fred. We're in big trouble. We called Billy that day and said, hey, um, we're going to do everything we can to try to get this place open in time, but this might be a challenge. So over about a 2-month span, we hired a team as best as we could. Kitchen
mhm.
team, front of the house team. Actually, the first server I hired, Darius, to this day, 8 years later, I got on an Uber from the airport, B&A airport, coming in from Chicago to do this kind of meet and greet with hopefully future employees. He was my
Mhm.
Uber driver. To this day, he's still a server at Sunda Nashville. He's actually a trainer, from what I understand. His name is
Wow.
Kevin Kurtzman. Great guy, awesome guy, and does a great job. And so, but he was so not the norm, and even he was really rough around the edges. We had to really work with him. We actually brought him to Chicago and had him work in
Mhm,
Chicago with us so that we could show them kind of what our Chicago guys do. Right? We took our sous
mhm,
chefs and we flew them to Chicago and we had them work with our chefs there. We had our managers fly to Chicago and work with our managers there just so they had an understanding of what our expectation was because without it they would just think they were doing great.
mhm,
And so when we finally got the place open, there was a lot of really good energy, but there was a lot
mhm,
of like missteps, right? We
mhm,
weren't as sharp as we were in Nashville or in Chicago. And it's kind of goes back to that whole saying that you talked to me about. What are the three most important things? Consistency. We weren't serving
yeah.
serving Sunda food. We were
Mhm,
close, but we still weren't there, right?
mhm,
They didn't have the heart that our people had. They didn't have the energy that our people had. They didn't have the passion our people had, right? And
mhm.
they had the want, but they didn't have it yet. And so those things were missing. And over time we got it. And Nashville's just a tough market, man. Chicago is a food scene. Nashville's getting there, but it's slow. It's very
Yeah.
slow.
Yeah. And with opening, how did you end up separating from the company?
Yep.
I would assume it had something to do with COVID, or
Hmm.
how did that end
They
up
did.
happening?
Yeah. So when COVID hit, as you know, the partnership team was pretty large at one point. It had Billy, Brad, Arturo, Kevin Hickey, myself, Mike Morales. And when it was done during COVID, it was just Billy and I. The rest of these guys kind of went by the wayside for whatever reasons they went by. And for me,
Mhm,
Darius, Billy and I just had a different view of kind of where we thought Sunda was going to go. I was really big on, as the operator, as somebody that was operating every day and being there every
mhm,
day. Billy's job was on the backside, and he did a great job. He did an amazing job of everything he needed to do on the backside. So no qualms with that.
mhm,
When it came to the front side, he wanted to make some moves when it came to bringing in some outsiders from a financial standpoint that for
mhm,
me just didn't sit well with me because at the end of the day, I know that would have put my role in jeopardy. And so
mhm.
that and the fact that I just felt like and again, my personal opinion, and I'm very, this, Derry, working with me. For me, respect is everything.
Yeah.
I try to give everybody the greatest respect they possibly can have,
Mhm,
even if times are tough. And for me, COVID was rough for a lot of our people, and I didn't feel
mhm,
like we, I didn't feel like we took care of the employees as much as we could have. I felt like we took care of people that we didn't know really well, but I felt
Mhm.
like the employees that some of them that weren't eating, that didn't have jobs, I just think that it was rough. And for me, I made that decision to walk away. And we did it very amicably, Billy and I, and just told them like, hey man, I want to see nothing but great success with Sunda. Billy and I are
Mhm.
not really in touch much, but when I tell you that I talk to almost everybody in Sunda, I talk to Chun all
Mhm.
the time, who's no longer there, but Nina's still with the company. I talk to her all the time. Periodically, I talk to Mikey and Johnny and those guys. And so it was a
Yeah.
very amicable split.
Mhm.
And then I took a job locally here in Nashville, and I was there for almost 4 years. I was running a food hall company,
Mhm.
Assembly Food Hall, and it was a monster. There is 120,000 square foot music entertainment center, and also
Mhm.
24 restaurants in one spot. It was a food hall, and so I was in charge of running the whole entire thing, and I loved it, man. I had such a great experience doing that, and it treated me so well. And I ended up taking over a food hall in Texas called Legacy Food Hall, same
Mhm.
company. And they really wanted me to move to Texas. My wife had already lived in Texas and really
Mhm.
enjoyed her time there, but never really wanted to go back. I was
Mhm.
going there once every couple of weeks just to kind of visit my home store, and I didn't mind doing, or one of my stores, and I didn't mind doing that.
Mhm.
But moving wasn't an option for me, and they really wanted that person that was kind of the
Yeah.
director of operations, was me at the time. Pretty much their whole company is based in Texas, and so I
Mhm.
understood that, and so for me, it was just easier to find a job here. And so ironically, today is what, February 1st. I'm actually
Mhm.
starting Tuesday. My new role, I'm taking on a complex that's very similar to the food hall, but it's not the food hall company. So I'm taking over a place called Friends in Low Places, which is owned by Garth
Mhm.
Brooks and Trisha Yearwood, two very famous country singers. They're amazing people. I got an interview with them and Strategic Hospitality, who owns the venue. They're incredible people, the owners, managers. So
Yeah.
super excited to get an opportunity to start there on Tuesday. So I'm really looking forward to
Wow.
that.
Congratulations.
I
Now I want
appreciate
to
it.
ask you, what's one of the craziest throughout your years of working in the industry, what's one of the craziest stories you've probably encountered since working in the industry?
So you appreciate this, Darius, because you're a chef. So true
Mhm.
story. I can't even make this. This is crazy. But and ironically, my brother and I and my nephews, we were just talking. I don't know, a couple weeks ago when I was home in Chicago. My whole family still lives in Chicago. So I literally go home to see my mom, who's in a memory care center, or I go home and I
Mhm.
and I see my dad kind of once every couple of weeks just to make sure they're okay. While I was there, my brother asked me the same question you just asked. And he knew this story, so I'll tell it to you. So when I was at McCormick and Schmick Seafood Restaurants, I was a director of operations. And so I had stores in Schaumburg, Illinois, Oakbrook, Illinois, two in downtown, one in Skokie, and one in Rosemont. So I happened to be in my Schaumburg location, and I was visiting one of my restaurants, and the general manager that worked at that restaurant happened to be a really good friend of mine. Darius, did you get an opportunity when you worked at Sunda? Did you work with Kevin Feingold?
I did work with Kevin Fingal. I did.
Yeah, so Kevin actually passed away. He had cancer a couple years ago, and God rest his soul.
Oh,
But
wow.
he was one of my really good friends. And so my history with Kevin, the reason why Kevin came to work at Sunda, is because him and I worked together at McCormick and Schmick's. And so him and I are sitting in that store in Schaumburg, and we're having this conversation. And one of our servers comes up to us and says, "Hey, table 34 has got a complaint to Kevin, who happened to be the general manager at the time." And Kevin's like, "All right, I'm on my way there." And him and I have this friendship, man, that we just kind of have this joking friendship. And so I was like, "Hey, for good old, for old time's sakes, Kevin, I got this, man. Let me go to the table." He goes, "All right, cool." He's like, "Brett, these people in Schaumburg, they're different." I'm like, no, no, man, I got this. Don't worry about it. I've been doing this for years, right? So I go to the table, and so I set it up like this. There were two ladies, probably mid-50s, they're sitting at the table. They had plates in front of them. We had a we had an entree at McCormick and Schmick's. It was actually excellent, really, really good. It was called a cedar salmon. And the reason why it was called cedar salmon is because we would take a piece of salmon and we would put it on a cedar plank and we would cook it on a cedar plank so that when you cooked it, you got the wood taste into the salmon, right? And so it
Yeah.
was great. You had this taste of the salmon, you had the taste of the cedar, a little bit of cedar wood in there. So I go to the table and
Mhm.
I said, "Ladies, I understand there's something wrong with your salmons." And one lady had a salad, the other one was eating salmon. And she's
Uh-huh.
like, "Actually, the salmon is really, really good, but the bread underneath it is really bad." And I looked down at the plate. I can't even make this up, Darius, because part of our presentation was to take it out of the oven, put the hot cedar wood, because by the time we got at the table, it would cool off, onto the
Yeah.
plate and present it with some mashed potatoes and some berry sauce. And I
Mhm.
kid you not, Darius, there was a chunk about this big missing from that cedar plate, from that cedar wood. And I was like, and again, mind you, that I had this relationship with Kevin Feingold that we're always joking, right? So I'm looking
Yeah.
around thinking, this has got to be a joke. I got to be being punked. I'm being videotaped somewhere. This has got to be a joke. And I'm looking at the lady, and I'm like, ma'am, you do realize that's cedar wood underneath there, right? She's like, no, I've had this multiple times before. I'm like, oh my God. She's done this more than once. And I kid you not, there was a big piece missing. Her friend, like you, is dying laughing, Darius, because
Wow.
she doesn't believe me, and she's like, no, I've had this bread before. I'm like, ma'am, you have to trust me. This is not bread. This is wood. And I'm looking at Kevin, and Kevin's dying laughing in the background. So I really thought I was getting pranked, but I wasn't, Darius. She was dead serious. And she said,
Wow.
I've been here before and I've had this before. And I'm like, ma'am, you have to trust me. And her friend looks at her and she had the best statement. I think her name
Yeah.
was Gladys. And she said, Gladys, all I know is you're going to be taking splinters out of your ass all night tonight. I was like, oh my. And she was dead serious. That was the craziest thing that ever happened to me in the restaurant business. Now, the nightclub business at Underground, I mean, Darius, we saw everything. So we just saw things that probably are not good for this podcast. Let me just tell you
Yeah.
that.
Wow, that's crazy, man. I think one of the craziest things I've ever saw, and it's not so much in the industry, but one of my coworkers, he was I'm not gonna say what job, but at one of my workplaces, I asked him for a ride home, and it was me and one of my other guys. We both were in the car with him, and the driver he stopped, and one of our other coworkers gave him a rolled up dollar bill. And I'm like, I didn't think anything of it, like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
cool, whatever. And he like, hey, y'all, give me a minute. I'm hit this real quick. I was like, what is that, yo? And lo and
Yeah.
behold, it was the white powder that,
Yeah.
and
No,
I
I'm
thought
like
that
you,
was
man.
crazy.
And it's so funny, Darius, and I'm 56, and I've been in the business. Honestly, I've been working working for my parents since I'm 10. So basically, 46 years I've been working in this industry. Some
Mhm.
management and some work, most management, but some working. In 56 years of living, man, I'm like you. I think you knew this already. I don't drink. I've never drank in my life, and I
Mhm.
don't do drugs. Right? I always. And so when I see things like you just talked about, like to me, those are very shocking things because I'm not used to being around them. Right? So
Yeah.
I kind of talking about Underground, you see that, right? And you're just like, oh my God. And to them, this is like everyday life and it's normal. And to me, I
Yeah.
was like, holy cow, I can't believe I'm seeing somebody actually taking a line of cocaine off the bar in front of the bartender, right?
Yeah.
And I was just like, it was mind blowing to me. And I always make the joke, people always come to me over many, many years of working like, man, you don't drink, you've never drank, you've been in this industry this long. And I always make the
Yeah.
joke that no, man, if I ever decide to do anything, I'm going right to the hard stuff. I'm going right to crack. I'm gonna skip drinking and go right to crack. But yeah, knock on wood, God's always blessed me in the fact that I've never had to try to use those things to enjoy
Yeah.
life. So it's been great.
No, for real. I remember one of my days at Sunda, all the guys on the line, they just I said, knew that everybody like, oh, you don't drink? Oh, give it a couple of years, you'll be drinking.
Yeah,
And I've never, I started to drink, but I've never drank where it was like something I depended on. I did it
yeah,
because I've always wanted to. For one, I was very curious as to why people would drink it. I'm like, what is so good about
yeah,
alcohol? That was one of the
yeah,
main curiosities. Like, well, I wanted to find whatever the fascination in drinking. Why did people love drinking for?
yeah.
Never could I find the fascination with it.
No, I hear you.
Uh,
For me, it's always been
and
about control, Darius.
yeah,
I watch people drink, and I listen. I've gone out to nightclubs. I used to go with my friends. I was always the designated driver, but I would
yeah,
even watch my friends who did it,
mhm,
and they weren't in control. Like, and then the next morning I'd be like, "Hey, do you remember this?" And they'd be like, "No." I'm like, "Are you
mhm,
serious, bro?" He was like, "Oh, Brett, I blacked out at certain." That scares the living daylights out of me, Darius. Not to be in
yeah,
control of my own destiny, not to be in control
exactly.
of where I'm gonna be next and how I'm gonna get there. And so I think
Yep.
for that reason, I never drank and I never did drugs because I would watch my friends not be in control, and that scared me. That really scared me.
That's a very scary feeling, and it's something on the same way. I said I never want to be into I never want to get into a space where compromise, you know. I don't want to
Yeah.
be where I'm never in control of my body basically, you know. It just doesn't feel it's not a feel good thing, you know, to think that I'm not
Yeah.
in control of the things that I'm doing. But I want to we've been on for almost an hour. I don't want to keep you too long. This is a great conversation, you know.
Yeah.
But
No, absolutely, man.
I want to ask you what's one thing you feel what's the biggest disconnect between front of the house and back of the house do you feel uh that there is where do we miss the mark most of the time?
Yeah, and it starts and it ends, Darius, in one spot, bro. One spot and one spot only. And that's communication, man. I think the one disconnect in the restaurant business, Darius, is that not all places. So I don't want you to think all places. Some places, yes, and I would say a lot of places, yes, and some places have mastered the understanding of that. You have a leader in the kitchen, you have a leader in the front in most cases. Usually they're never the same people. If you're in a restaurant that actually is very proud of their food, you're going to have a leader in the kitchen, you're going to have a
Mm,
leader in the front. And sometimes those titles are undefined. And what I mean by that is the kitchen guy in charge of the whole restaurant, or is the front of the house guy in charge of the whole restaurant? In most cases, not all, the general manager is told, hey, you run the whole entire restaurant. That means
mm,
the chef reports to you. Not all cases, but most. And some general managers take that power and they don't know what to do with it. And they also think, all right, cool. That chef's going to do what I want him to do, or that chef's going to be how I want him to be, or we're going to make the type of
yeah.
food that I want to do. Even though he's in charge, I have the trump to do that. And so what ends up
Mm,
happening is there's a major disconnect between the communication between the front and and the back. And I think the breakdown of any successful or any unsuccessful restaurant is that there's not a lot of communication that happens between the front of the house staff and the back of the house staff. If something goes wrong, somebody's always pointing a finger. It was the back of the house fault, or oh, it was the front of the house fault, right?
mm,
And so what happens is, as opposed to being one team, and one thing that I was really proud of more than anything in all my time working in any restaurant I worked, whether it's McCormick and Schmick's, my parents' restaurant, Sunda, and my current
mm,
ones, the ability to not communicate with anybody on your level, whether it's back of house, front of house, is just setting you up for failure. And
mm,
so not being able to communicate is the biggest disconnect when it comes to front of house and back of house, because we put out great food. And if your front of house managers don't know how to represent that food,
mhm,
doesn't matter if you put out great food or not. People are not going to understand it. So you need us as much as we need you. And the same thing for the front. The front thinks, oh, we give great service, and oh, it was the kitchen's fault because they didn't like the food. That's not the truth. That food could have been
mhm,
perfect when it hit the window, but we might have ran it out a couple minutes too late, or we might not have done the right justice to make sure it was dressed up properly. So there's
mm,
so many different factors to how restaurants work. But the one thing that I don't think enough restaurants do is make them understand you're one team, one heartbeat. It's kind of like that old sports saying, one team, one heartbeat. You go, we go.
mhm.
And that's how it should be. And that's the biggest disconnect between the two.
I definitely agree with that. Sometimes, you know, you'd
Yeah.
be like, I remember in my tenure as a sous chef, I will always literally be looking for. Sometimes, not all the time, but most of the time, especially during the rush, you're looking for your food runner or somebody to run the food, and you're like, man, the food is here in like 2 minutes now. I need to run this food, so I end up running the food because you know I don't want the food to die, and I want to make
Yeah.
sure that the guest is getting the best experience that they're getting. So I
Hmm.
definitely
Great
understand that
point.
part. Yeah.
Great point.
What's one thing that you what's one piece of advice that you would give to the next generation that you feel is very essential within the things that you've already told us in addition to that?
I think the first thing that I would do is for a young aspiring person that's coming into the business is
Mhm,
to pay attention, to really pay attention to what's happening around you. Not assume that you know everything. Not assume that you can't learn something. I think even today, I'm 56, Darius, and I learn things new every day. The younger Brett
mhm,
probably should have done a better job of paying attention. I think I figured it
mhm,
out probably around 35, 36. Like, wow, there's a lot to learn even though I thought I
mhm,
had it all figured out. I think that's the first part. And the second part that I think as I get older, and I think I've already mentioned it to you, is we work in a very challenging industry. It's very rewarding. We get to take care of people. We get to see their smiles on their faces when we do it right. We also get to see their unhappiness when we're doing it wrong because they're paying their hard-earned money
Mhm.
to give us to hopefully have a great experience. So it's disheartening when we don't do it right.
Mhm.
So the next thing I'm gonna tell you is even more important than the first part, and that's pay it forward. Make sure that again, however you got to wherever you got to, there's other people that need to understand how you got there. There were many people that touched me in my life for so many different reasons, some on a work level, some on a personal level. But from the work standpoint, even brought up Arturo Gomez. I didn't have a ton of Arturo and I worked hand in hand, yes, for the most part,
Mhm.
but Billy had a Billy and I worked together more than he did, than
Mhm.
Arturo did. But the impact that Arturo had on me the first day that I met him in a meeting, again, I came home, I was like, man, I got to go work for that guy. And I
Yeah.
kept telling my wife, I don't care what it costs, what we need to do. I need to go work for that guy because what I knew was I was going to be better for it. And so that's what I'm
Mhm.
trying to do now in life is pay it forward. Anybody who's looking for something, who's willing to listen, who's willing to take things on and not be that know-it-all type of person, I have
Mhm.
a wealth of knowledge that I'm willing to kind of pay forward to. And if you want it, great. And if you don't, it's okay. It's
Yeah.
look, I'm not the end all be all either, but I know that I've failed in so many different places that I've learned
Mhm.
from and I've had some successes, and hopefully through both, I can pay it forward to people who want it.
I definitely understand what you mean by paying it forward. I'm at a place now where for me how I'm gonna pay it forward is by I'm building my own non for profit. As you said, we used to do a lot, even which I'm really grateful for. You all afforded me the opportunity to bring people in, even while in my learning stage. You all allowed me to
Yeah.
like host different events where I was bringing in students to try the food and things like that through the partnership of Embark. And saying that it just sort of really made me want to start my own non for profit. I already have my business plan and things like that ready to go for it. But I basically want to teach the next generation what it means to cook and what cooking is like and the actual technique of cooking, because I feel like a lot of people don't really know how to build flavor. I'm not gonna say a lot of people don't, but when in the videos that I watch, a lot of people are using like already pre-made seasonings and things like that. And I want to be able to
Yeah.
teach the people how to make those, different seasonings and things like that. How to make a barbecue rub, how to make a taco seasoning, where you don't have to go always get the taco pack
Yeah.
out of Jewels or wherever. I want to be able to pay it forward and also give 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 work readiness. I want to be able to give work readiness throughout my non-for-profit while teaching them, also allowing them to be able to get hands-on experience in what it's like to work in catering and things of that nature, what it means to hold inventory and things of that nature. That's some of the ways that I plan on paying it forward to the community uh, in the near
That's
future.
awesome, man. And you understand it more than most, Darius, because you've had to come up through the ranks in ways that not everybody has to come up in. So you have a lot more that you can give and a lot more that you could show to people than the common person. And so I'm really glad to hear that you're trying to do that.
Yeah, thank you. And this brings us to a part of the segment called Unpopular Opinions. My favorite segment because you get to
All
share
right.
what's your unpopular opinion. And my unpopular opinion is that birria tacos are overrated. It's not that good, but for whatever reason, it's the biggest thing that's a lot of people enjoy. I don't understand it. I mean, I'm able to enjoy it, but I just feel like it's overly rated in the way
Yeah.
people push it, talk about it.
That's a great point. To this day too, there's I don't understand the whole craze with burrito tacos. And for me, living in Nashville, it would be hot chicken. I don't get it. It's just chicken tenders with a bunch of hot sauce that's done in like different ways. And quite honestly, and I'll probably get destroyed for saying this in Nashville, but it's greasy. It's just not good. I mean, it's not good. Look, I know this is crazy, but our people in Chicago, there are places in Chicago, and again, some the names of these places I can't remember them, but there were some amazing places that had
Mhm.
homemade chicken tenders in Chicago, suburbs and downtown Chicago, and all these different places. Dude, to be honest, all they had to do is flip them in a little bit of sauce, and that's hot chicken, and it was a lot better than the chicken we get here, bro. So, unpopular opinion, I can tell you right now, hot chicken. If you're coming to Nashville for the hot chicken, stay home. Chicago got chicken. Just go buy some hot sauce and toss it. You'll save a lot of money on the trip, and you'll save a lot of money on the chicken because the chicken ain't cheap here either. But I will tell you, Nashville is a really, really awesome place.
Man, that's awesome. I really appreciate this conversation. It was very insightful. It was really great to connect with you again. Like this is
Yeah, dude.
heartwarming to me to be able to connect with you, and I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Hopefully I'm able to see you either out there in Nashville or back here in Chicago one day.
Yeah,
And
man.
tell the
I
people, oh,
don't
go
go
ahead,
for
and
it.
then
Go ahead.
I was gonna say
I was
just
just gonna
tell the
I was just
people how
gonna
they
say,
can connect with you and things like that. That's all.
yeah, so I am on LinkedIn and I am on Instagram at Brett slash Shane slash 23 at 23, or yeah, at Brett Shane, excuse me, 23. And that's kind of the best way to do it. I'm all over Facebook, Brett Shane. But yeah, when I come home to Chicago, dearest, I'll make it a point to reach out to you and we'll get together and have a non-alcoholic beverage or whatever the
For
case may
sure.
be, and maybe grab some food. But I'm really, really excited the fact that you've taken your culinary journey, because I'll tell you, last thing for me is you were one of those young men that had every reason to give up on the culinary side of it, because your first experience with us was like, saying that we beat you down is the wrong thing, but what I would say is we we didn't make it easy for you, and
Not
you
at all.
and you're still here talking about it, and talking about it in a positive way. So that just shows me your maturity, of you understood exactly that sometimes it takes hard knocks to come back up
Mhm.
and kind of become the person you are.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's definitely true, And hopefully not everybody had to go through that experience. That's my goal
Definitely
to
not.
to
Yeah.
to make sure not everybody had to go through that route where it
Not
could be a
everybody's
little
wired
easier.
like you, bro.
For
Yeah.
sure. I
Okay.
appreciate it, Brad. Until next time.
All good, Darius. Thanks, man. I appreciate you. We'll talk soon.
For sure.
Take care, buddy.
You as well. Thank you for watching. If you have any suggestions, ideas, or things you'll let us see on the show, I really want to hear from you. Email me at realchefstalk@gmail.com. Let me know where you watch it from, what you do, and if you're interested in connecting, collaborating, or even featuring on the show. If you feel like you got something to say and something to add to the conversation, please don't hesitate to reach out. You also can connect with me on all social media platforms: Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Spotify, YouTube. Just search Real Chefs Talk, and let's keep the conversation going. I'll drop the link in the description to make it easy for you all to stay connected with me. And I just want to say thank you and that I truly appreciate you all. Until next time.